So, hello everyone. I'm Nicola from the Max Perutz Labs Climate Group. Welcome to today's climate lecture by Philipp Weber about sustainability in research funding. This meeting is being recorded, and I will give a few words to introduce our speaker, Philipp, and then hand over to him. Philipp is a cell biologist by training and did his PhD here in Vienna, studying bacteria that sit on marine nematodes. For his studies, he traveled around the world collecting worms, generating many tons of carbon emissions per trip. At the same time, he was marching with Fridays for the Future. He was surprised that there was not much discussion in the research community about the environmental footprint of our research activities. This is why Philipp in 2019 and his colleagues founded Green Labs Austria, a bottom-up initiative to connect labs. In 2023, he moved to EMBO in Heidelberg to support researchers in their sustainability initiatives, most recently with a focus on discussing the role of funding agencies. And without further ado, I would like to give the stage to Philipp now.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nico, for this kind introduction and for having me today. It's my pleasure, and I'm fairly excited to share a little bit of what we do in Heidelberg, to share some words on the Heidelberg Agreement and also some of the recent developments that happened in the research funding field in respect to sustainability. So first I want to share some words about EMBO. So EMBO's core mission is to promote excellence in the life sciences. We are a membership organization with more than 2,000 leading life scientists in Europe and beyond, and they guide and direct our programs and activities, for instance, by serving on our councils. And yeah, EMBO's mission is really to promote researchers in all stages of their career, for instance, through the fellowships programs. We have also networks that we maintain. We also fund courses and workshops, and of course we're also aware of the environmental footprint that is associated with that. Then we have also global activities and do some policy work. And what I'm talking today about is also part of this policy work that we do. And yeah, then EMBO is also a publisher. So EMBO Press comprises several journals which are also like really at the forefront of the open access movement. And yeah, there's also some effort in updating and modernizing the review process. And yeah, EMBC. So where does our money come? From the European Molecular Biology Conference. So this is an intergovernmental organization that comprises 31 member states in Europe. And we have also global partners like India, Singapore, Taiwan, Chile, and Japan. And this internationality make EMBO in a way ideally suited also for addressing global issues like climate change and other sustainability issues. So, so where do we stand? We are meeting here in early 2025. So 2024 has passed, and that means we have finished our data collection for 2024, and this translates into a lot of reports at the moment. Here I just selected one by Copernicus. That's a program of the European Union to collect data. And yeah, as you can see here, this was published last week. They write 2024 is the second record-breaking year following the exceptional 2023. And exceptional, of course, in this case, is not something good. In 2024, we breached the 1.5 target from the IPCC and had an average temperature of 1.6. And why this is and while this is not really surprising, it's nevertheless very alarming, and a lot of reports really confirm that number. And yeah, 2024 was full of records. We had a high level of greenhouse gas emissions. We had high air temperature and sea level temperature, and also all of this translated in extreme weather events. Here, an example from Heidelberg, where I live now. So in Heidelberg, 4 people died in the floods that we had in June. And yeah, here you see the old bridge, and the water really like went into these first rows of houses. And I moved quite close actually to the river. So I was concerned, was it the right decision actually to move here? Is this future proof? But then a couple of months later, I got these images here from Vienna. And yeah, as you can see, Vienna's rivers were really raging. We had a so-called 1 in a 1,000 year flood in September. And yeah, for a couple of days also the subway didn't work for obvious reason. It runs here next to the canals. And yeah, I mean this time it went really quite well, even though we had at the peak time 10,000 cubic meters of water running through the waterways per second. One must know and appreciate that Vienna has really great flood protection system. We have the Donauinsel, the Danube Island, and canals, and there's a lot of investment also went into this. So in 2023, alone 1 million euro were invested into the system, and there is a maximum capacity that this system can take, and this is 14,000 cubic meters per second. So we still have a little bit of room here. But in a way, I'm still worried, because science says that these human-caused extreme weather events, they will become more frequent and more severe. And I can really hope that we can win this race, and that we don't have a situation in the future that escalates. So if right now we are leaving Europe and we're going to the US, we see that it's really dramatic. The situation in California truly got out of hand. Here it's obviously no flood, but wildfires. And this is a screenshot that I just took a few hours ago. And yeah, the numbers are really devastating. There were 124 wildfires, fatalities, and thousands of structures destroyed. And yeah, I also read this article that says a climate scientist, he or she knew that it was time to leave Los Angeles, and maybe he or she managed. But not everyone is that lucky and that privileged maybe to leave that place. And also not thinking about the Hollywood stars, but really there's a lot of people are losing their houses. And of course, it's not only the climate scientists that are aware of this and that are concerns. Also, life scientists, for instance, call for action. And here's just a collection of the literature that can maybe be divided into two parts. On the one hand, there's these voices that say we need to use our knowledge, our creativity, and our science to accelerate our fight against these sustainability crises. For instance, molecular biology for green recovery, or microbial solutions must be deployed against the climate catastrophe, or climate science needs biology. And then there's another part that is also self-reflective and looks at the way we do science. Are we also contributing to the problem, the way we are doing things? For instance, here labs should cut their plastic waste, or other studies. And also, Nico, you wrote this article with colleagues, The Paradox of the Life Sciences. And I really hope that we can overcome this idea, and that it will not be a paradox in the future. And we at EMBO, we try to really promote sustainability in the life sciences and help scientists to connect sustainability with their work. At the moment, we have 3 strategic priorities. On the one hand, fostering partnerships and shaping policies. The Heidelberg Agreement is one example of this. In the middle, you see promoting sustainable excellence and also defining what we mean by that, and finally also like shaping the future of conferencing. So as said before, as funder of conferences, we are aware that promoting mobility comes also, of course, with the conflict of having an environmental impact associated with this. And this is why we're analyzing also the impact of these activities, and also promoting a culture and awareness by establishing a sustainability conferencing badge. So conference organizers, they can earn leaves, like 1, 2, up to 3 leaves for measures that they implement. And we see that this is quite well received. So 2/3 of all conferences organized in 2024 achieved at least 2 leaves. So then we had a Lab Sustainability Award in 2024. And the award went to Martin Fahle for his outstanding work on lab certification programs. Some of you might have heard of LEAF, the lab certification program. And I'm really happy about this because Martin has sustainability at heart and is since years also a true driver like for the community. And this year there will be another round for this award, and it will open. The call will open tomorrow. And this year the focus will be on group efforts. So a little bit of shift of focus. And I'm looking forward. So if you have a sustainability initiatives where you partner up with others, please visit our website and apply for this. And now I will use the rest of the time to talk about the Heidelberg Agreement. So the Heidelberg Agreement is the outcome of a workshop, of a closed policy workshop that we had in May last year. The title was Funders' Role in Promoting Environmental Sustainable Research. And you can see here on this map that we try to have a quite broad reach, like in Europe. I think it's quite okay, but it can be improved, of course, in the future. And we had a strong emphasis on funders here in red on the European level, but then also in different countries. And from Austria, also the FAF was at this workshop. And then besides funders, we also invited other stakeholders, research organizations, EPFL was present, EMBL, our neighbors here in Heidelberg, the CNRS, and then also an institute in Spain. And then we also invited bottom-up initiatives and creators of tools, and also finally social scientists, right? Because in the end, it's about research culture if we want to achieve the necessary transformations. And one of the questions that was discussed at this workshop was how can we successfully integrate sustainability considerations into funding schemes? And I just want to give you 3 examples of organizations that were at our workshop, starting with the DFG. So the DFG anchored sustainability considerations in their funding activities. And this started here in September last year. And they're collecting, so to say, a self-reflection paragraph. This is what they're asking for the applicants. And this can be accounted, can be taken into account, this information, into so-called plausibility check. While we don't really know at the moment what this means, I think it's a good start, and it's a very dynamic process. And they also describing this in this document here to the right. And there's 2 quotes that quite well capture the sentiment of how they approach sustainability in this context. So it is important for people to learn from each other in this area, given that it's new to everyone involved. And yeah, I couldn't agree more with this. And it only works in a close dialogue between actors in the research system. So next, I want to give you one example here from the European Commission, because I think that's also relevant to many postdocs now and in the future. So they have the Green Charter, and if you apply for a fellowship from the Marie Skłodowska program, then you need to fill in half a page about what actions you plan to implement in their project, and why this is not taken into account for the final decision. When there's two projects that are of equal quality, this can be also a criterion. And at the end of your project, you're also asked to report on how the implementation worked. And I think this is very valuable information. And even though it seems sometimes tedious to do this at the end of such a project, be reassured that the funders will read that information that is provided. So right now we are also participating in updating the Green Charter. So this is also something dynamic that gets informed from the research community and also from the statements that the Marie Skłodowska Action Charter receives back. So finally, we have one example from the UK. So Welcome is a very interesting case. It's very different to the other two funders. It's a philanthropic funders, and this is why they can also do things a little bit differently here. They really set standards for researchers in their policy that was published in April 2024. And here's one example that concerns the lab environment. So for labs, they are required by the end of 2025, so by the end of this year, to have achieved a minimum level of accreditation of one of these lab certification programs. So, and this can be either Leaf, My Green Lab, or similar certification. And importantly, they say that the responsibility is on the researcher, but also on the institutions. And if this comes to additional costs for researchers, they can also claim that in their applications. Then they also ask organizations in high-income countries to sign up to the UK Concordat. And this is really a very unique effort from the research and innovation sector in the UK to partner up with different stakeholders. So there's different, so the whole research and innovation sector committed more or less to integrate sustainability in everything they do. And right now they're really discussing, okay, how does this work now? How can we implement this? But it's a great start, and also multi-stakeholder effort. And I wanted to mention that today. So to do this successfully, there are a lot of challenges and questions that have been discussed here for the funders. If we collect now new information, for instance, also data on the environmental footprint, how can we weigh this information? How can this influence our decisions on funding projects? How can we be fair to different fields of research? So depending on the research, you might have a very different impact on the environment. And then, of course, there's also a question: where do we get the expertise from to make this decision? Most probably, it will be a dynamic process and needs to adapt when new information is available. So that's also a question: how can this be designed dynamic? And then there's the big topic around academic freedom that pops up very often. And I don't want to open that box now, but I'm happy also to discuss this later if you want to. And then we have already a very a system that is under a lot of pressure. So how do we prevent putting even more pressure on the very busy researchers? And I think key for that is also to prevent that this is a compliance-based approach, meaning that it's just another exercise that you do with ChatGPT without even thinking much about it, and copy paste a text that no one wants to read. And I think this is very important. And to make this successfully, the feedback from researchers and organization is really needed here. So then, what are the challenges for research organizations? Very similar. Where do we get the expertise for this? And the expertise also for understanding the environmental footprint. Greenhouse gas emissions are a huge challenge. There's a lot of research done also on this. Scope 3 is a challenge. Data availability is a challenge, and so on and so forth. And biodiversity is probably even a bigger challenge. So there's a lot of work that is waiting for us. And of course, for addressing this, organizations need the support from funders and also from proper research into these areas. And then, of course, on the level of the researcher, it will be a challenge to deal with the different requirements from the different funders. We can already see that it's quite heterogeneous. And then also these requirements might be changing in the future. So that's important to consider this, and to have a discussion really ongoing on how to solve this. And then, of course, how do researchers get the time, the tools, and the expertise for this they also need, of course, the support from their organizations, which is very important, and also money from funders. So I think it becomes really clear now that there's a few organizations that are spearheading this integrating sustainability into funding schemes, and it's not quite easy to know how this translates into sustainable research. So we know roughly where we want to go, right, to have sustainable research, but we don't know at the moment how we will get there. But what we know is that we can only achieve this together. And here's just a picture from the scenario planning that we had at the workshop, where Martin Farley and Anne-Marie are just discussing how this road could look like. And we had some truly collaborative energy back then in the room. And this is, I think, why we managed to come to 6 consensus points. And I think this is quite remarkable. So the organizations that were in this workshop agreed that funders cannot risk doing nothing. And I think we all have a picture in our head what could happen if we stay inactive, right? Also the pictures from California gave us an idea. Funders should set ambitious goals and also share a set of principles towards sustainability. So even though these funders are very heterogeneous, it makes sense to have a shared approach, or at least discuss shared values and strategies on how to approach this. And then, of course, because funders have strong influence through distributing money, it makes sense to include sustainability and the importance of sustainability into the funding schemes. So then funders should support the coordinated development and adoption of education, quantification, and accreditation tools. I will say a few words just on the next slide on this. And of course, all of this should be done in close dialogue with researchers and research organizations. So why is it important that funders and researchers evaluate and, when necessary, coordinate the development of tools? So there is some standards in research that the research community has fought for in the last decades, and one of them is also to have research available in an open access manner, and also share the codes and have it open source. And we felt that these requirements, that we should also apply them when thinking about tools for researchers. So sustainable tools for researchers should be free to use for the research community, open source, user-friendly and scalable for institutions, independently tested and reviewed, and also regularly evaluated and updated. And yeah, some of the current very promising tools, including the lab certification programs, they lack transparency and are not open access, and their future pricing model is not very clear. It doesn't mean this can change, of course, but it was important for us to highlight this also. And yeah, all of this got codified in the so-called Heidelberg Agreement on Environmental Sustainability in Research Funding. So it was published in October on Zenodo. That's a preprint platform where it's, of course, open access and available. And yeah, if you haven't opened it, please do so. It was a lot of work to bringing all these organizations together, and I really hope that it can also boost your sustainability agenda in one or the other way. And yeah, the majority of organizations, they could support this document from Austria. Also, the FWF is endorsing this document, and they write here that it is a first step in the direction of sustainability in research. And they also highlight here how important it is to network and partner up in Europe and probably also beyond. And yeah, we see this Heidelberg Agreement also really as a first step. So this is not a finished process, it's just the beginning of it. And on our long journey towards sustainability. And yeah, the participant of this workshop agreed, and this is why, yeah, after the workshop, a working group formed to discuss how funders can really support researchers with easy to use and open access resources. And there's very concrete projects that are right now formed to exactly do that, to have a funder-owned research platform, which should make it more straightforward for researchers to implement sustainable practices. And this will be also discussed in a follow-up workshop in March, which is in London and hosted by UKRI. And yeah, then I have here one slide showing some efforts that happen at Science Europe. That's an organization that, yeah, a club of funders, so to say, on a European level. And yeah, they're also discussing these topics, and they had recently just two publications, a survey amongst their members where they evaluate best practices and also exchanging them, and also a framework for yeah, research organization, which includes research performing organizations, universities, and so on, but also yeah, research funding organizations. And yeah, they write here that really systemic change is needed to ensure that scientific research is organized, managed, and conducted in an environmentally sustainable manner. And agree with that. It's a big task, but there is a growing momentum for this. And yeah, I want to conclude that here's a small take-home message that funders really, they strive and they want to support researchers in their aspirations to work sustainability. You have heard that they have started to integrate sustainability in different flavors into their funding schemes. And all of them are also tools to really seek a dialogue with researchers, because yeah, everyone agreed we don't want here a box-ticking exercise. And yeah, for researchers, depending on for which grants you apply, you will be affected by the new conditions in the funding schemes. For instance, this policy by welcome, one example where yeah, a lab certification program has to be integrated in your lab, and this in the end affects everyone in the lab, like from the lab manager to the PI. And yeah, then there's also this self-reflection paragraphs, and I really hope that they are used also to give feedback to the funders, because again, be assured that this is going to be used to update also to update what is done. So all in all, there's also an opportunity in that for researchers to ally really for sustainability, because there is already a lot of great initiatives already going on. And I really hope that this will also lead to new funding for the initiatives that are already going on, and also for that will translate into more support by institutions for projects, just like this one. This is an example here from EMBL, from their sustainability stories. You see here the Gene Core facility, they improved the strand-seq protocol. And they are quite sad here because they're using so many tip boxes and plastic plates for their protocol. And they managed to improve that protocol so that the waste really got considerably reduced. But it's not only about that, it's also about, if you do that, rethinking protocols with a sustainability mindset, you might also end up, like in this case, with less waste that is produced, with less time that it needs, and also less costs. And in that case, they also had a higher reproducibility. So I'm showing that because I really want to highlight that sustainability and excellent research they can really go well together. And yeah, lastly, I want to present a community effort from Green Labs Austria. So last week, there was a study published. So 7 labs analyzed the lab waste. So labs with different backgrounds. And they found that scientists produces on average 160 kilograms per year. And surprisingly also that yeah, only 10 items made up for 90% of the waste. And that's actually interesting data, and this can be really a starting point for yeah, demanding new products that are yeah, less carbon heavy from the suppliers. And this potentially can also influence other sectors. If you think like the footprint of the academic sector is quite small compared to other sectors, the requirements that we have are quite high. So if we can establish principles in this sector, they could have this could have an effect of other sectors like the health sector, where we have different requirements for sterility, for instance, or durability of products. So I hope these were interesting examples. And if you don't know where to start, I really recommend to you, yeah, if you're a researcher, to find the Green Labs group and to use your scientific curiosity and also creativity to connect your science, your research practices with sustainability. And I'm sure it will also boost your science. And yeah, with this, I want to end here, and I'm really looking forward to answer your questions and to discuss with you.
Thank you, Philipp, for your talk. We will put many of the papers and initiatives you mentioned in the show notes. And I encourage every participant to post their questions in the chat or to raise their hand and unmute them and ask the questions in person. Isabella?
Yeah, Philipp, thank you very much. Very interesting presentation. You mentioned that there will be a follow-up workshop next year, right? Where the participants will then discuss these tools, as far as I remember, right?
Yes, there will be a follow-up workshop, and one of the topics will include also a resource platform for researchers, and how funders can can build that together, because there's a lot of resources right now available, but they are scattered. Some are just in one language, right? And not everyone understands French, for instance. So to bring that all to one place, this is the idea, and that these resources also follow some quality criteria, right? And there is a quality assessment of those as well, and yeah.
Super. This is really interesting. I mean, how can we, for instance, follow new developments in this area? Will there be a follow-up paper, like this paper on the Heidelberg Agreement, or I don't know, yeah, how can we get informed on?
No, that's a great question. So we also communicated, even though this workshop was behind closed doors, right? We try to communicate the outcomes as fast as possible, and this will be again an imperative for the next meeting. That this is, even though the workshop will be closed again, that the results and the discussion can happen in a way broader community, because feedback is so important. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Otra, you raised your hand.
Yes, thanks for the great presentation. I have some concern that bothers me again and again, and that that refers to instruments that we acquire, because I think that in the biomedical sciences, at least, we use a lot of very also specialized instruments, and some of these are used for methods that are fashionable for a few years, and then they are not fashionable any longer. Also, at least here at my institution, we have funds that are issued for a year. If they are not used up in that year, they will just be forfeited, and that means that people sometimes simply buy instruments because we still do have the money, and I really have no no idea myself how this issue can be dealt with, and I wondered whether there is any from your side or among your contacts.
No, this is a great point. Thanks for bringing it up. I think it also made it into the Heidelberg Agreement, because on different levels, institutions are facing this problem. So also on the funder level, they also need to spend money within the fiscal year. And then if we would plot, for instance, on the researcher side, when purchases are made, probably we see an increase towards the end of the fiscal year, and these are probably not always the best purchasing decisions. So this topic came up, and we are also actively thinking about how can money be transferred, how can project phases be extended. I don't know the answer yet, but in these short periods of time, I think that's an issue for research. If you have short time windows to spend money. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Petra van der Leij asked the question. Would you like to ask it yourself, or should I read it?
I'm not sure if my audio is working. Is it? Yes.
The audio is working.
Okay,
yes.
good. Yeah, I was wondering if there's somewhere like a list of hands-on tips or ideas of how we can actually reduce waste and increase sustainability in the lab. Like, of course, I know the ones about the reducing increasing the temperatures of the -80s and stuff like that. But yeah, there must be like the example you showed with how they reduce the amount of tips. Can I find that somewhere, or?
Yeah, I mean, as said, these resources, they are spread. There's a few initiatives and also bottom-up organizations that try to bring them together. Green Labs Austria is one example. Green Labs Netherlands is an example. The Sustainable European Laboratories Network is another example. It was on my last slide. So here, this is the home for all these regional networks. So Sustainable European Laboratories Network connects Green Labs Austria, Irish Green Labs, Green Labs in the UK, and Green Labs Portugal. And they really try to be a hub for these resources. But because a lot of work is still voluntary, that means that they're not always up to date, and maybe also not including all the resources available. Because we know, for instance, also that a lot is done, for instance, in France, in Labos 1.5 network, and those are probably a bit more difficult to find. But yeah, I'm sure if you do a proper Google search, you will find what you need. And again, we are working on also making this even more easy accessible.
Okay, and it's not like EMBO as a funder is providing lists or something for their fellows or for whoever. Yeah.
No, we are not providing that. So someone just posted also in the chat a quite comprehensive study which was published in the Royal Society of Chemistry journal. Maybe that's a good starting point. But EMBO itself, we are contributing right now in eventually creating this new hub, this new platform that could bring all these resources together. But one issue that was identified is that it is widespread and not centrally localized.
Good, thank you.
A very important question. Saki, you raised your hand.
So I think it's actually kind of a similar question, but it's mainly just for non-scientists who want to collaborate. Like you were saying that there are, I guess that's still science, social scientists or artists or people who are not doing laboratory research. How can they network better with laboratories to do this kind of interdisciplinary project to raise awareness and fuel the cultural movement? Because I am having, as an artist, I am having a really tough time finding like some kind of central database, or even with Google, like where can I get, grant money, or how can I find new scientific institutions that I could collaborate with? And there's just like a lot of legal aspects to, for example, like I'm making art out of lab waste. So there's a lot of legal aspects that come into question, and I don't know where to find, what are the local laws for these things.
No, thanks for bringing this up. I would just start with the last bit, and this is all the regulations about waste, which is, depending on where you are, there will be different regulations. And there's also a lot of gray area when it comes to lab waste. In Austria, we try to follow up on where our waste goes, and it needs to be autoclaved and is afterwards incinerated. So what I'm trying to say here is that there's potential really for improvement. But what we also could show is that lab waste could safely be channeled into recycling processes. So there is a potential. Maybe we are not there yet, but there is really a potential because of this high quality that our lab plastic, for instance, has. That's in a way interesting also for recyclers, because because of the high quality of the plastic. So it's very intransparent and unclear and very difficult also to find information on that. So even for us working also in labs and in the different countries, it's very different. So I don't have an answer here. So often it's also a gray area. So some institutions might be more careful than others. So we need the ones that just dare to do one step and maybe giving you material to let you do the great art that you did, and yeah, how to find maybe cooperation partners. I think this is what you're also actually doing, right? So going to conferences, spread the word about your work, and yeah, then really trying to identify like-minded people, because you need the support, of course, from maybe researchers that invite you, but also the institution, in your case, needs to back you up, right? That you are able to get your material. And so there must be probably a checklist of these are the 5 things that I need to clarify before I'm able to really engage with you, because if not, I might produce something where, I don't know, people are afraid because it comes from the lab. And yeah, this was not an answer, but I think you're doing a great job in reaching out to researchers and get them out of their comfort zone. Yeah.
I think it's also like, for me, when I attended some of these conferences, and for me it was not very difficult, because I had been a scientist before and I had attended these conferences as a scientist. So, but I can imagine that many non-scientists might be intimidated to apply to attend, and they might be maybe they don't even know that it's an option. So yeah, I'm hoping that conferences will be more or I guess will feel less exclusive in the future.
No, 100%. I agree with you. I think we should have one artist at least at every conference. I mean, that's my personal opinion now, and because you are in a way also spearheading this. Of course, it seems difficult, but I'm sure you're also paving the way for others that might have it then a little bit easier. Yeah.
This is also a good message for the funders, right? If they help fund meetings, they could also add requirements like this too. Yeah. I see no more questions in the chat, so maybe I can ask you at least 1 or 2. And I would like to know, so the problem is to get down to numbers, like to really have a standardized way of quantifying CO2 emissions, or maybe even the impact on biodiversity. How can we come closer to a standard that is accepted internationally?
So yeah, you're absolutely right. Right now, yeah, everyone that approaches this big project of assessing their greenhouse gas emissions does it in a little bit in a different way. Setting the system boundaries is arbitrary. What gives me hope is that many research organizations are setting net zero targets. And also the call from transparency, it's getting louder and louder. And that means all the approaches that we used, they will be, yeah, there will be a need to reflect on those heavily. And I hope that in this process, that we will also agree, at least in the scientific community, on some standards. And if the standard is to be 100% transparent about what you do, I think this is maybe the most important, because it's a highly dynamic field. It's a research field itself, and it also requires a lot of resources, and not everyone also needs to do the same, right? I think communication is very important here, that not every institution goes to the same steps, same tedious steps, but that we yeah, collaborate on this like we would collaborate in research. So that's the hope of just using the strength what we have in the research community, and this is our internationality, and also our joy in exchanging information and discussing the approaches. I feel this is what also this needs, right? And yeah, we are not there yet, I feel. But these net zero targets, they give us a very clear incentive to be creative about this. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we also need politics to demand standards.
Sure. I mean, right now, for instance, emission factors, they're behind a paywall, right? And I'm personally really wondering why is that? Why there is no EU database, for instance, that makes it very easy to use these emission factors, right? Because you buy an emission factor and then you're not even allowed to share them, or like the transparency is also not 100% here. So there's a lot of room for improvement. I agree. Yeah.
Okay, so one last question. Do we know about the United States? Are there similar approaches to involve funders in sustainability?
So we try to extend our network also to the US. I must say, funders in the US, I don't want to mention names now, but they're quite reluctant to engage. And of course, there's also obvious reasons in politics in the US. But we really try to open doors here. To see whenever they're ready to join the movement that I feel we have right now in Europe. But compared to also the examples that I gave today, there's not so much going on, at least to the best of my knowledge, right? I also have a very limited view, of course, but that's my impression from interacting with funders in the US.
Okay. Yeah, then thank you, Philipp, for this input. Thanks everyone for participating. As I said, we will put as many informations as we can in the show notes to share resources. And I hope to see you for the next climate lecture.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.